If you give a company 13 years of your life, you expect loyalty in return. What I got instead was a slap in the face disguised as a business decision. My name is Amanda Mitchell, and until 4:37 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, I was the senior operations manager at Cornerstone Logistics in Dallas. For 13 years, I kept that company running with the kind of efficiency most firms only dream of. I managed a team of 27, oversaw $680 million worth of freight every year, and maintained an on-time delivery rate of 98.7%. I didn't just do my job. I built the system that made everyone else's job possible. And the man who benefited most from my work was my boss, Regional Director Kevin Hammond. Kevin and I had one of those professional relationships where on the surface, everything looked respectful. He called me his right hand, praised my leadership in every quarterly review, and repeatedly told me I was next in line for Vice President of Operations. For 2 years, he fed me the same line. It's coming soon, Amanda. Board approval is just a formality. You've earned it. At first, I believed him. You don't assume someone would lie about something as serious as a promotion at that level. A VP title isn't a casual promise. It's a career milestone. It changes everything. 3 months before that Friday, Kevin scheduled a meeting for 4 p.m. sharp. The purpose was clearly written in the calendar invite: finalize VP promotion details and transition planning. Not discuss. Not review. Finalize. I spent weeks preparing. I had ideas for restructuring, growth strategies, employee development plans, and a smooth transition roadmap. I walked into his office that Friday dressed like the executive I had earned the right to become. That morning, I even brought pastries for the team to celebrate. My staff knew how long I'd been waiting for that moment, and they were rooting for me. But the moment I sat down in Kevin's office, something felt off. He wasn't dressed like someone about to promote a VP. No formal binder. No contract on the desk. No HR representative. He leaned back in his chair like it was any other casual meeting. Amanda, thanks for coming in, he said, smiling the way people do when they're about to deliver news they hope you'll swallow without a fight. I wanted to discuss the VP position situation. That word stopped me cold. Situation, not promotion, not transition, a situation. My stomach tightened, and for the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel like his right hand. I felt like a problem he was trying to smooth over. Still, I kept my posture calm. I'm ready to go over the final details. Kevin cleared his throat, folded his hands, and delivered the line that would change both of our careers. So, the board reviewed the proposal, and they've decided to postpone the position creation indefinitely. Budget constraints. Just like that. No empathy. No apology. No acknowledgement of the promises he had repeated for years. He acted as if he were informing me about a delayed shipment, not a life-changing decision I'd built my future around. In that moment, something in the room shifted. It was subtle, but I felt it. The air got heavier, quieter, thinner, like the calm before a very large storm. I had walked into that meeting expecting advancement. Instead, I walked out with a question burning in my mind. Was the promotion ever real? Or had Kevin been stringing me along to keep me working at VP level for a manager's salary? I didn't have the full answer yet. But I was about to find out. And Kevin Hammond was about to learn what happens when loyalty is taken for granted for too long. Walking out of Kevin's office that Friday, the hallway felt different. The same walls, same office chatter, same blinking monitors. But the atmosphere had shifted. It felt like I had been dropped into a version of my workplace that looked familiar, but no longer belonged to me. People smiled and waved as I passed, unaware that the celebration I had hinted at all week had turned into a silent humiliation. I sat at my desk and stared at the screen, without seeing anything for several minutes. For the first time in 15 years, I did not open my operations dashboard. I did not check carrier performance. I did not send my usual Friday end summary. I just sat there, replaying the conversation. Budget constraints. Postponed indefinitely. Be patient. The more I thought about it, the more something felt wrong. Not just disappointing. Wrong. Looking back, there had been red flags long before that meeting. I had just ignored them because I trusted Kevin and believed the promotion would happen. I gave the benefit of the doubt every time, thinking he was doing his best. Now, Those moments suddenly looked different. Like puzzle pieces that formed a picture I had not wanted to see. The first flag had appeared about a year earlier, during one of our quarterly leadership dinners. It was usually a small group of senior team members from each region. We met at a restaurant near the office, shared updates, discussed goals, and reinforced collaboration. I had attended these for years as the highest performing operations manager in the region. That night, Kevin had invited two people who had never been part of these dinners before. Both were far less experienced. One was a coordinator he had hired 6 months earlier named Rachel. The other was a junior analyst named Brett, who seemed more interested in flattering Kevin than discussing operations. I remember watching Kevin laugh at their jokes and lean in to talk to them, as if he were grooming them for something. They did not contribute anything of value to the discussion. When I brought up a major process optimization idea I was testing, Kevin brushed it aside. "Let's not get into heavy topics tonight," he said, before turning back to Rachel to ask about her weekend travel plans. That had never happened before. He normally encouraged my ideas in front of others. That night I went home uneasy, but I told myself he was just trying to make new team members feel included. The second red flag came during budget season. As senior operations manager, I always participated in reviewing budget allocations for staffing, training, and technology. It was routine. I had a seat at that table every year. But that year, Kevin held those meetings without me. When I asked, he said, "We kept it small to keep it fast. I will update you later." He never did. Then suddenly, I was informed that we could not approve 2 critical training programs my team needed. It was odd that we could not afford development for the department that managed $680 million in business. And yet Kevin somehow got approval for a new office renovation that included a private meeting lounge for executives. At the time, I convinced myself it was normal corporate budgeting. But now, paired with the promotion excuse, it felt connected. Another moment resurfaced. About 4 months before my promotion meeting, Kevin started leaving the office early at least twice a week. He had always been someone who stayed late. He used to say, "Operations never sleeps." Suddenly, he was gone by 4. If anyone asked where he was, the answer was vague. "He is on a client call. He is at a leadership meeting. He is working remote this afternoon." But I noticed something. Every time he left early, Rachel and Brett had meetings with him earlier in the day. Closed door. Short meetings that ended with them walking out smiling. Sometimes with printed documents they tucked away quickly if they saw me nearby. There was no reason for them to be part of strategic discussions. They were too junior. They lacked the experience. Yet Kevin kept them close. At one point, I walked past the conference room and saw Kevin and Rachel reviewing a slide deck. Rachel rushed to cover the documents as soon as she noticed me walk in. "Sorry. We are still working through this," she said, almost too quickly. Kevin added, "Just a small internal review. Nothing final." It was the first time he had ever been guarded with me. At the time, I brushed it aside. Now it replayed in my mind with new meaning. There were more signs that now felt impossible to ignore. For example, Kevin had stopped copying me on certain emails. Weekly regional performance summaries started arriving late and incomplete. There were sudden changes to client assignments with no explanation. He reassigned 2 key accounts I had managed for years to other coordinators and told me it was to free up my time for strategic planning. Strategic planning for what? The VP role that apparently did not exist anymore. Even my staff sensed a shift. One day Marcus came to my office looking uncomfortable. "Is everything all right with the promotion?" he asked quietly. "I heard something from finance. Something about executive compensation freezes." I tried to reassure him. "Everything is fine. Kevin said it is on track." But inside, I felt a tremor of worry. I could tell he did too. The emotional toll of these red flags crept up slowly. I started waking up at night, wondering if I had missed signs. I began double-checking my work, even though I had never doubted my performance before. I found myself rehearsing conversations with Kevin in my head, preparing for questions he never asked. I had given that company everything. My late nights, weekends, cancelled plans, holidays spent in the office during peak season crises. I missed family events, skipped vacations, and poured 15 years into building an operations system that others relied on. I shaped careers. I mentored people. I carried the weight of performance metrics on my shoulders, because I wanted Cornerstone to win. I believed loyalty would be rewarded. Sitting at my desk that Friday, the truth finally hit me. The promotion had never been delayed. It had been a convenient tool, a carrot. A way to keep me producing VP-level results while being paid as a manager. I had believed every promise because I trusted Kevin. He had taken that trust and used it to stretch my loyalty as far as he could. The realization stung in a way I had not expected. It was not only a professional disappointment. It was personal. It felt like betrayal. As the office emptied for the weekend, I remained in my chair, staring at the glowing monitor that blurred in my vision. I finally packed my bag and walked out, but I paused outside Kevin's office. The lights were off. His desk was clean. On the door, his nameplate gleamed under the hallway lights. Regional Director Kevin Hammond. I had once imagined my title on that door. Vice President of Operations. Now, all I felt while looking at it was a quiet, steady shift inside me. Not anger yet, not revenge, just clarity. Something had changed. Something inside me had started to wake up. The earliest red flags I had ignored were lining up in my mind, forming a clear picture of a man who had been planning something long before he told me the truth. I just did not know the full story yet. But I would soon. And once I saw the full truth, there would be no going back. All weekend, Kevin's words echoed in my mind. Postponed indefinitely. Budget constraints, be patient. I tried to shake it off, but the more I replayed the meeting, the more it gnawed at me. I wasn't angry yet. I was confused, disappointed, exhausted. I needed answers. Saturday morning, I opened my laptop and went through my emails. That's when I noticed something strange. A forwarded email from a trusted contact in HR, marked confidential. I hadn't seen it before, because it was sent late Friday evening, after I'd left. My heart kicked into a faster rhythm as I opened it. It was a copy of a communication between Kevin and the executive board from nearly 6 months ago. The subject line alone made my skin tighten. Revised VP promotion plan Southwest region, not VP creation, not proposal, revised plan. I scrolled. Kevin had written, I recommend we pause Amanda Mitchell's VP advancement and explore a different direction. While she excels operationally, I am developing 2 emerging leaders, Rachel and Brett, who may better align with the future executive culture I aim to build. Emerging leaders, future executive culture. Better aligned. My vision blurred. I kept reading. My concern is that Amanda is deeply rooted in traditional operations. For long-term strategy, I need executives who are adaptable to change and loyal to my leadership style. Loyal to his leadership style. After 15 years of loyalty, suddenly I wasn't loyal enough. Then the next line hit with the force of a punch. I suggest we retain Amanda in her current role for the next 12-24 months. She will continue delivering high-level results, which buys us time to develop Rachel and Brett for future executive positions. No compensation adjustments at this time. I read that line over and over, unable to breathe for a moment. Retain her to deliver high-level results. Buys us time, no compensation adjustments. So this was never about budget. He had deliberately held me in place to use my expertise while grooming 2 less qualified people to take the leadership positions I had earned. He wasn't conserving funds. He was conserving power. He wanted executives he could control. People who wouldn't challenge him. People who would follow his direction blindly. He knew I had influence. He knew people respected me. He knew I was strong enough to stand on my own. That made me a threat, not a leader he wanted beside him. That was the betrayal. I stared at the email, stunned, my pulse loud in my ears. For 2 years, every time he smiled and said, "Be patient," he was buying himself more time to train his chosen successors behind my back. He had used me. You don't give someone 15 years of your life expecting your loyalty to become the weapon used against you. The heartbreak hit first. I had given my all to build something I believed in. I mentored his team. I fixed his mistakes. I carried his region. I trusted him with my career. Then the rage followed, powerful and hot. I had been blindsided, not by budget cuts but by a calculated plan to block me. He strung me along to squeeze every ounce of value out of me, before replacing me with two juniors, who couldn't hold a candle to my experience. I needed air. I grabbed my keys and drove without a destination, just trying to breathe through the storm inside me. I ended up parking by White Rock Lake, staring at the water, hands tight on the steering wheel. I felt shocked. Sick. Betrayed. Humiliated. There's a particular kind of pain that comes from realizing someone didn't just disappoint you. They manipulated you. I thought about the late nights I'd pulled to protect his region. The holidays I worked while he vacationed. The endless weekends I sacrificed. I remembered the times he said, "You're my most trusted person here, Amanda. You're the backbone of this region. You'll be VP before you know it." All lies. A memory hit me like a triggered trap. A few months earlier, Brett slipped up in a meeting. He mentioned a future executive outline he had been reviewing with Kevin. When I asked what outline he meant, Kevin cut him off so sharply the whole room went silent. At the time, I let it go. Now, I understood. He had been preparing Brett behind my back for the position I had built. My phone buzzed. A message from HR. The same contact who sent the email. "You didn't get this from me. But you deserve to know the truth." I typed back only one word, "Thank you." By Sunday morning, the disbelief had settled into something else. Not revenge. Not yet. But clarity. A quiet, steady resolve replacing the heartbreak. If Kevin could plan behind my back, I needed to start planning for myself. I spent hours going over old years. My results, my team achievements. The systems I built. I had proof of my value, proof that no one could erase. If he thought he could quietly replace me without consequences, he had severely miscalculated. That evening, something happened that pushed me from shock into decisive action. Marcus called. He sounded nervous, like he had been debating whether to say something. "Amanda, I know it's late, but I need to tell you something. I overheard a conversation last week between Kevin and one of the VPs from corporate. They were talking about leadership restructuring. Kevin said he planned to transition you out of operations control within the year." I sat still, feeling the chill run through me. Marcus continued, "He said you were too independent. Too respected. That once Brett and Rachel were ready, you'd be moved into a special strategy role with less influence. Less influence. After building the region from the ground up. So not only did he block my promotion, he was preparing to push me aside completely." When the call ended, I sat in silence for several minutes. My heartbreak was gone now. So was the disbelief. What remained was a calm, sharp awareness of who I was dealing with. Kevin hadn't just betrayed me. He'd tried to erase me. And I knew one thing with absolute clarity. If I didn't make a move now, he would ruin my career to protect his own. But I wasn't going to react emotionally. I wasn't going to warn him. I wasn't going to give him the chance to twist the situation the way he had twisted my loyalty. I was going to think. And then I was going to act. Because he might have taken advantage of my loyalty. But he had forgotten something important. Behind every successful operation, there is one person who truly knows how everything works. And he had just pushed that person too far. Sunday night was the first time in a long time that I allowed myself to sit still with my thoughts. No spreadsheets. No performance dashboards. No planning for Monday, just silence. A cup of coffee, and the truth laid out in front of me. For most of my career, I worked with one belief at my core. If you give a company your best, if you stay loyal, keep your standards high, and show up when others step back, leadership will see your value. I lived by that belief for 15 years. It guided every decision I made at Cornerstone. Now I sat alone at my kitchen table staring at the printed email that exposed Kevin's plan to block my promotion. The same email where he described me as a temporary tool to buy time. Beside it were my own notes. Numbers, metrics, achievements. 15 years of results that had held his region up like a foundation. For the first time, I asked myself a question I had never dared to ask. What if loyalty had been holding me back instead of lifting me up? The thought shocked me at first. It felt disloyal. Wrong. Almost disrespectful to the version of me that had worked so hard to earn Kevin's trust. But the thought stayed. It did not fade. It grew louder. I did not sleep much that night. I replayed moments that I had brushed aside for years. The unpaid overtime I never complained about. The holidays I worked while senior leadership vacationed. The times I covered Kevin's mistakes quietly to protect the region. The job offers I had turned down because I believed I was weeks away from becoming VP. My loyalty had not been appreciated, it had been exploited. By early morning, a quiet shift had started inside me. It began as a single clear sentence. I deserve better than this. It was not anger. Not yet, it was truth. A simple one. A fair one. I said it again out loud. I deserve better than this. Hearing my own voice say it changed something. Like I had finally admitted a truth I had been denying for years. I made breakfast, got dressed, and walked to my car with a different posture. I was not the same woman who left the office on Friday. Something had settled into place. When I entered the office on Monday, I expected to feel bitter or uncomfortable. Instead, I felt observant. Detached in a way that allowed me to see everything clearly. The office looked the same, but I no longer felt tied to it. People greeted me as usual, but I noticed details I had ignored before. The forced smiles. The hesitation when people mentioned leadership decisions. The tired faces of good employees running a system held together by pressure instead of respect. It struck me how much of this place ran on silent sacrifice. Not just mine. Many others. And leadership did not value it. Later that morning, Kevin walked into the operations floor. He looked confident, almost cheerful, like a man who believed he was in control. He stopped by my desk. "Amanda, hope you had a restful weekend. I know Friday was disappointing. But I need you to stay focused. We have a strong quarter to push through." Every word felt rehearsed, polite, and empty. He did not ask how I was doing. He did not acknowledge the weight of what he had taken from me. He moved on like nothing had happened. As I watched him walk away, a calm thought settled in. He believes I will stay. He thinks he still has control. That was the trigger. Not the email. Not the betrayal. Not the heartbreak. It was that moment. Watching him speak to me like I was a loyal employee who would accept any treatment, swallow disappointment, and continue performing at the highest standard for nothing more than a promise he could break again. He saw me as a dependable resource, not a leader, and certainly not someone he believed would ever walk away. That belief was the fuel I needed. At lunchtime, I stepped outside with my notebook. I opened to a blank page and wrote a single title at the top. What I want my life and career to look like next. It felt strange at first. I had not asked myself that question in years. My entire plan had revolved around Cornerstone. Moving up the ladder. Building a legacy there. Becoming the VP who shaped the future of operations. Now I wrote without stopping. A new picture began to form. A workplace where talent was rewarded honestly. A team built on respect. Not fear of losing a job. Leadership rooted in fairness. A company that valued the people who built it. I sat back and looked at what I had written. It was the first time I allowed myself to imagine a life outside the walls of that building. The idea of leaving was no longer frightening. It was freeing. The turning point came fully into focus that afternoon when I met with Jennifer, one of my most trusted analysts. She came into my office, closed the door, and sat down with a look of concern. "I know something is wrong. You do not look like yourself today. You look calm, but not in a normal way. More like you have made a decision." I held her gaze. She had been honest with me for years. She deserved honesty back. "I realized something this weekend," I said. "I have been loyal to a promise that was never real. I cannot keep building a future here that is not mine." She exhaled slowly, her eyes softening with understanding. "I wondered how long it would take for you to say that," she replied. "You give more than anyone in this company. You deserve the title, and you deserve the respect that comes with it." Her support steadied me. I was not imagining the unfairness. Others saw it too. I was not overreacting. I was waking up. After she left, I closed my office door and allowed myself a moment to breathe. My heart was steady now. For the first time in months, maybe years, my thoughts felt clear. This was no longer about a promotion. It was about reclaiming my worth. I had spent years waiting for someone else to grant me the next step. Now I understood that the next step was mine to take. The shift inside me completed itself, in a single thought that rose without hesitation. I am done waiting for permission to become who I already am. From that moment forward, my mindset changed. I was no longer playing defense. I was no longer hoping Kevin would see my value. I was no longer clinging to a future built around his approval. I was preparing for my own future. One I would build on my own terms. The plan had not formed fully yet, but the direction was set. I would not confront Kevin. I would not give him warning. I would not rely on emotion. My next move would be thoughtful, quiet, and rooted in strength. The same strength that had kept Cornerstone running for years. As I packed up for the day, I looked around the operations floor one more time. The teams I had trained. The systems I had built. The people who still believed in fairness. I cared about them deeply. And that care was not weakness. It was the reason I would not allow Kevin to continue using me as a shield while building his own legacy on my work. I walked out of the building with a calm I had never felt before. It was the calm of someone who had stopped begging for a seat at a table and started preparing to build their own. Kevin thought he had ended my story on Friday. He had no idea I had just turned the page to the chapter that would change everything. When clarity replaces shock, you begin to collect tools. My tools were files, timestamps, and people who remembered the truth. Kevin thought he had me boxed in. He thought I would keep delivering results, while he quietly built his team of compliant deputies. That belief made him careless. It also made him vulnerable. I spent the first few days after my decision simply cataloging everything I already owned. There was more than I imagined. Emails that showed who had been taken into budget meetings, and who had been left out. Calendar invites with vague titles. The performance reports where 2 junior coordinators suddenly appeared in strategic planning notes. The revised plan email HR had forwarded to me. Each piece was small on its own. Together they told a story. I printed the critical documents and saved multiple encrypted copies. I exported email threads, saved PDF snapshots of board communications, and pulled historical budget spreadsheets that showed where money was redirected. I labeled each item and made notes about why it mattered. When you plan a response, the first requirement is that you cannot be dismissed as emotional. Facts are your armor. If Kevin tried to spin this as miscommunication or corporate reorganization, I needed a clean timeline that showed deliberate intent. I mapped every interaction that had felt odd in retrospect. The leadership dinners, the early departures, the sudden private meetings with Rachel and Brett, the budget meetings held without me. Each event got a date, a short description, and supporting documents. When I was done, the pattern looked surgical. The timeline showed a campaign to marginalize me and groom replacements. Step 30: Identify allies you cannot win alone. Fortunately, I had quietly built trust for years. Marcus, Jennifer, and Thomas had already shown their loyalty just by staying true to the work. I started by testing the waters with people I trusted. I called Marcus first. "I need your honesty," I said. "Not for revenge exactly. For clarity. Did you ever notice anything off about Kevin's behavior with people he was promoting?" He hesitated, then told me things I had suspected. He had seen the reassignment of accounts without explanation. He had noticed Kevin was copying junior staff on executive emails. He had heard the phrase, "future culture," in meetings, and it did not sit right. Marcus agreed to document what he knew, and to save copies of the client communications he still had. Jennifer was next. She was methodical. She built her own folder of the training requests Kevin had denied, and the executive lounge renovation he had quietly championed. Thomas collected client complaint logs that showed where the region had been exposed when Kevin made sudden client reassignments. These were not dramatic confessions. They were practical contributions. With each person who quietly agreed to save documents or write a short note about what they had seen, my case thickened. I had spent years mentoring those people. Part of my plan had to be protection. If Kevin noticed me collecting evidence, he could retaliate. So I was methodical about how I worked. I used encrypted personal devices. I made sure copies of documents were saved off the company network. I advised my 3 closest colleagues to save critical files to their personal drives, and to keep professional copies of anything that showed their contributions. This part felt heavy. It was risk management and care at once. I would not ask them to risk careers without reason. They were already uncomfortable with the way leadership had been shifting. Protecting them was both ethical and strategic. You do not shout from the rooftops the moment you have a theory. You plant seeds. I began to subtly test Kevin's narrative in small, controlled ways. At one meeting I asked about timeline for leadership changes, and requested that HR share historical records about position creation and compensation decisions. I framed it as personal curiosity about organizational process. He smiled and gave a vague answer. But he had to respond. Every question he answered created a small paper trail. I also started forwarding innocuous but revealing emails to a secure external account. Nothing illegal, nothing defamatory. Just copies of corporate communications that showed a clear pattern. If Kevin later accused me of taking documents, the timestamps would show I had saved only what was already accessible to senior staff. A revenge plan that fails is the worst of all outcomes. I needed an exit strategy. I reached out to a trusted recruiter. I updated my LinkedIn in private mode. I asked a former colleague who had moved to a competitor if they were hiring senior operational leaders. The conversations were discreet. That did not mean I wanted to leave right away. It meant I refused to be captive to promises that could be broken. I wanted leverage. I wanted freedom. The recruiter asked the obvious question. What would make you move? I did not lie. I want a role where my work is valued, my title matches my responsibilities, and my team can grow. Also fair pay. Simple and direct. No drama. That clarity made the recruiter work faster. Step 70 exposed the pattern to the right ears. This was the hardest part of the plan. You can document abuse, but you only get traction when you bring it to decision makers who can act. But who? HR might be compromised, or scared to escalate. The board might be reachable. The largest corporate clients definitely cared about delivery continuity and contractual obligations. A performance breakdown that cost clients money would get attention. I drafted a carefully worded executive brief. No emotion. Just facts, timeline, and potential risk. It showed how retaining a high-performing manager, while training less experienced staff, as long-term executives increased exposure to client complaints. It included the financial impact of delayed training and the risks of low morale. I did not accuse anyone by name. I laid out the facts and the likely outcomes if the plan continued. The brief was ready, but I did not send it. Yet. Step 80. Set subtle traps. I needed Kevin to reveal himself more clearly, to show his hand in a place that mattered. For that I set a trap that relied on his need for control. I began to suggest pilot projects that required executive approval and documented sign-off. I asked that any decisions about leadership roles or account reassignments be traced through formal channels with email approvals and HR notes. Those requests were reasonable. Kevin agreed, assuming they would not hurt him. When he next moved a client to another coordinator, without documented approval, I quietly saved the exchange and escalated it through the formal route. I did not attack him publicly. I simply used the processes he had ignored. When HR requested more detail, because a client complained, the lack of approvals was painfully obvious. Kevin's casual approach did not protect itself when confronted with process. All the while, he acted as if he was in control. He continued to promote his narrative that this was strategic culture change. He gave rehearsed answers in meetings. He kept smiling. That confidence made his moves bolder, and strategically, more damaging. Every small trap I set was meant to do one thing. Force a reveal at the right moment. When he would least expect it, the pattern of his decisions would exist in black and white. The board and key clients would see the risk. The same man who thought he could quietly replace me would look exposed. I did not act hastily. I timed each step to maximize impact and minimize collateral damage. I protected my team. I protected the truth. I protected myself. In the quiet hours after work, when the building was almost empty, I would sit at my desk and look at the folders. The timeline, the emails, the notes from Marcus, Jennifer, and Thomas. I felt calm, not vindictive. Focused. Kevin still believed he held the reins. He still walked the office with that easy air of command. He sent orders. He hosted meetings. He smiled when he passed me in the hall. Meanwhile, my quiet work was spreading roots. This was not revenge for revenge's sake. It was correction. An insistence that promises meant something. A refusal to let the people who build value be used as leverage. When the moment came, it would be sharp and unavoidable. But for now, the villain had his illusion of control. The tension was rising. And that was exactly how it had to be. The plan was set. The evidence was organized, the allies were protected. And Kevin had no idea the ground beneath him was about to shift. Revenge wasn't a moment. It was a sequence. And every step had been leading to one specific day. The day Kevin would learn that the person he thought he could sideline was the one person he could never afford to lose. The trigger came sooner than I expected. 2 weeks after I started documenting everything, one of our biggest manufacturing clients, Apex Industrial, experienced a delayed freight delivery. The delay wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to violate a contractual performance clause. What made it significant was that Apex had been one of my accounts for years, and Kevin had reassigned it to Brett without informing me or the client. Apex's operations director called me directly. "Amanda, what is happening over there? I've never seen coordination this sloppy. You built a system that just worked." Suddenly we're chasing updates. I listened carefully, choosing my words. "There have been internal restructuring decisions. I am no longer managing your account. I'm sorry you're dealing with this." There was a brief silence, then a pointed response. "That decision was a mistake. If this continues, we will review our partnership." Apex was a $42 million account. One of the largest in the region. And now it was at risk. This moment mattered. Not because it hurt the company, but because it gave me the final piece I needed: impact. The board didn't act on stories. They acted on financial consequences. That afternoon, I initiated the final phase. I wrote my resignation letter and kept it short, professional, clear, effective immediately. I did not list complaints or emotions. I did not point fingers. I simply stated, after 15 years of service, I am stepping down to pursue an executive-level opportunity that aligns with my experience and long-term career goals. I am grateful for the team I have built and the results we achieved. I printed it, signed it, placed it in a sealed envelope, and scheduled a meeting with HR and the regional director. Not Kevin alone. Both. I wanted a witness and a paper trail. Attached to the resignation letter was a second document, a neutral business report titled Southwest Region Leadership Risk Assessment. Implications of Current Succession Strategy. Inside was everything the board needed to see. Not accusations. Evidence. Data on leadership changes, performance declines, client complaint patterns, and documented proof that experienced staff were being sidelined, while inexperienced employees were pushed into leadership, without proper training. The timeline showed when decisions were made, how performance dropped, and how the recent Apex failure was a direct result of Kevin's choices. A single sentence on the final page delivered the message without emotional language. The current succession plan increases the risk of operational instability, client dissatisfaction, and significant talent loss within the Southwest region. I handed the sealed packet to HR with the letter, thanked them, and walked out calmly. An hour after leaving the building, I forwarded the same risk report to the corporate board and the executive VP at headquarters. Not with commentary, just a courtesy cover note. As I am no longer an employee of Cornerstone Logistics, I believe you deserve visibility on material risks connected to Southwest operations. My intent is not to criticize, but to ensure transparency for the sake of the company's future. Professional. Controlled. Responsible. Exactly the opposite of how Kevin had treated me. I never asked anyone to follow me. That would have made the story smaller. It was important that their decision reflected Kevin's leadership, not my influence. But after resigning, I called Marcus, Jennifer, and Thomas individually. "I made my decision," I said. "I'm leaving. I won't tell you what to do, but I want you to choose what's best for your growth. Don't stay out of loyalty to me. Stay only if you see a future there." The silence on the other end of each call told me everything. They already knew. Each of them submitted their resignation within 48 hours. No drama. No group announcement. Strategically spaced. Each cited the same reason: lack of career development opportunities and unclear leadership direction. HR couldn't ignore it. 3 top performers leaving in the same week for the same reason wasn't coincidence. It was indictment. 3 days later, Apex Industrial reached out again. Quietly. Directly to me. Amanda? If you are moving to another logistics firm, we want to know. I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. I simply said, I'll be somewhere where my expertise is used to strengthen operations, not sidelined. Their answer was immediate. When you land, call us first. They were the first client who would follow. There would be more. Kevin called me 3 times. I didn't pick up. On the 4th attempt, he left a voicemail. Amanda, I think there's been a misunderstanding. HR showed me the report. We need to talk. There's still an opportunity for us to fix this. Us. There was never an us. The report went above him. Straight to the executive VP. And as I later learned, it spread faster than Kevin expected. The board demanded an emergency audit of the Southwest region. They called in the performance data, client complaint history, training budgets, and staff retention records. Everything Kevin thought he had buried under smiling reassurances was suddenly under inspection. He was summoned to headquarters for a review. He wasn't prepared. Because people who abuse loyalty always assume it will never run out. 2 weeks after I left, the largest logistics conference of the year took place. Executives, clients, vendors, and industry leaders attended. Cornerstone had a booth. Kevin was there, trying to maintain his image. I didn't plan to attend. But I received an invitation from Velocity Logistics, the fastest growing competitor in our industry. They wanted to discuss a VP of operations role. I accepted. When I walked in with the Velocity executive team, conversations paused. People noticed. Not because of a dramatic entrance, but because stories travel fast in logistics. Kevin's face drained of color. He knew what it meant to see me with their competitor. Later that day, Apex Industrial executives joined us at the Velocity table. They didn't look at Kevin. They didn't speak to him. Their presence alone delivered the message talent was moving. Clients were moving. And all roads led away from Kevin. Within 1 month, the Cornerstone lost 3 top senior staff. The 2 major clients began transitioning away. The Southwest region's performance score dropped below contract standards. A formal investigation into leadership misconduct was opened. Kevin wasn't fired immediately. Public consequences take time. But his power was gone. His reputation cracked. His future executive culture had collapsed before it began. He had tried to build a kingdom by cutting out the person who built the foundation. He forgot one rule. If you push out the person holding everything together, don't be surprised when everything falls apart. The downfall of a person who built his career on borrowed credit doesn't happen with a loud crash. It unravels piece by piece, the same way he unraveled the people who once held him up. Kevin Hammond didn't lose everything overnight. It came in stages, each one reflecting the very betrayal he tried to inflict on others. When I walked into Velocity Logistics that day with their executive team, something inside me settled. Not triumph, not arrogance, just peace. I had stepped out of the role where my worth was questioned and into a place where it was recognized without negotiation. By the end of that week, Velocity finalized my offer, Vice President of Operations. Full authority to build out the Southwest Division. A salary that finally matched my expertise. And something no contract can print, respect. But my story wasn't the only one changing. The cost of Kevin's choices at first. Kevin believed he could recover from the resignations and the client complaints. He tried to spin it as unfortunate timing and temporary staffing gaps. But the region's stability was built on years of systems I had created and the people who understood them. When they left, cracks appeared faster than he could patch them. Apex Industrial was the first to pull out officially. They invoked their performance clause, citing the delivery failure caused by Brett's mishandling. Cornerstone lost a $42 million account in one contract termination. 2 more clients, including a distribution firm and a food supplier, requested performance reviews. These were clients I had personally kept loyal for years, through crisis management and trust. Seeing my name on a competitor's leadership roster told them everything they needed to know about where stability lived now. They didn't wait for things to get worse. They transitioned their business to Velocity. The loss stung Cornerstone hard. To senior leadership, client stability was the currency of credibility. Kevin had gambled those relationships, thinking clients were loyal to the company. He forgot they were loyal to the person who solved their problems at midnight and answered the phone on weekends. Meanwhile, at Velocity, my first day at Velocity was the opposite of every late night I had endured under Kevin. David, the CEO, welcomed me with a simple statement that I didn't realize I needed to hear until that moment. Amanda, we trust your talent. Build the team you want, the way you believe it should be built. No conditions. No waiting. No hoops to jump through. For the first time in my career, I didn't feel like someone's employee. I felt like a leader. I spent the first few weeks listening, learning how Velocity worked, meeting department heads, and understanding their expansion goals. I wasn't in a rush to prove myself. I wanted to build well, not fast. When Marcus, Jennifer, and Thomas officially joined, the energy shifted immediately. They came in with a sense of relief and excitement. They cared about the work again. We built a culture based on accountability and trust. Real trust, not the kind tied to favors or silence. Within the first quarter, our division achieved a 97% on-time delivery rate. New clients signed with us based on word of mouth alone. People wanted to work in a place where leadership wasn't threatened by competent talent. It wasn't revenge. It was proof. Success was never about beating Kevin. It was about showing what happens when you take your skills somewhere they're valued. The breaking point for Cornerstone: 4 months after my resignation, the internal audit results came out. The board reviewed how the Southwest region had been handled. They compared performance under my leadership to the decline after I left. The numbers painted the story plainly. The 98.7% on-time delivery dropped to 81%. 9 senior staff members resigned. 12 clients issued formal complaints. With 3 major contracts were lost. One phrase from the audit summary stood out. Leadership decisions were made based on personal preference rather than operational merit. The exact behavior Kevin used to hold me back was now the documented reason for his fall. When the board finally confronted him, there was no room for excuses. He had weathered problems before, but not like this. He didn't just lose business. He lost the narrative he relied on to protect his image. 6 months after the failed succession plan, Kevin was removed as regional director. The announcement wasn't dramatic. No memo praising his work, no farewell event. Just a short internal notice stating he was transitioning out of the company. The same corporate language he once used to push people aside was now used on him. He had to watch the role he tried to deny me flourish in a competitor's office. And not because I destroyed him, but because he destroyed himself. A year later, 12 months after I walked out of Cornerstone for the last time, Velocity hosted a leadership summit. I was asked to speak about building resilient operational teams. The conference center was full. Leaders from across the industry, including some from companies that once ignored my ideas. As I stepped on stage, I saw familiar faces. Some from Cornerstone, some from clients, some from companies that used to compete against me. And in the back row, almost hidden, sat someone I didn't expect to see. Kevin. He kept his head down, hoping I wouldn't notice him. But people always feel small in the shadow of the very legacy they tried to erase. I didn't mention him. I didn't need to. I spoke about leadership that lifts instead of controls. About promoting talent because it's earned, not because it's convenient. I spoke about protecting the people who keep companies functioning. It wasn't a speech of revenge. It was a lesson wrapped in truth. I ended with a line that came from everything I had lived. Leadership isn't about holding on to power. It's about lifting the people who built it with you. And if you try to replace them with silence or loyalty tests, don't be surprised when they take everything you once relied on to a place that values them. The room stood. Not because the line was clever, but because they understood the cost of ignoring it. Before leaving that night, an operations manager approached me. She looked younger, eager, ambitious, the way I once was. She said softly, "I was promised a promotion twice. It keeps getting delayed. Hearing your story, I think I knew deep down it wasn't coming." "Thank you for saying what you said." I smiled. Don't wait for recognition from people who fear your growth. Take your talent where it's seen. That was the real victory. Not my new title. Not Kevin's fall. Not the contracts we won. It was the shift. The understanding that silence isn't loyalty. Loyalty without respect is self-betrayal. Leaving Cornerstone didn't end my story. It began it. And Kevin losing everything wasn't the revenge. The revenge was that he got exactly what he tried to create for me, a future, without a seat at the table. If you're still here, I want to ask you something. Have you ever given everything to someone, only for them to betray you when it was your turn to rise? Tell your story in the comments. You don't know who you might help by sharing it. If Amanda's journey hit home, subscribe to the channel. We talk about real stories, real betrayals, and real comebacks. Because somewhere out there, someone thinks you'll stay quiet and accept less than you deserve. Let's prove them wrong, together.